Hi and welcome to Academic Compliance Academy. In this video I'm going to talk about inherent versus residual risk. So what is it all about? Well, the inherent risk is a risk that exists in any process, activity, system or just real life when we have not set up control mechanisms or mitigating measures to lower the actual risk. So it's kind of the born risk in society. It's what you are exposed to as a human being, what corporations are exposed to just for operating. One example could be the risk of being run down by a car on the street, or for example, being a victim of fraud. These are risks that is exposed to most people, and we will have them in more or less a degree. And then we need to act upon it. We need to set up a mitigating measures or control mechanisms so we can handle this inherent risk to a certain point where we can tolerate our own risk exposure. When we do this, what we end up with is the residual risk. So this is a risk that is kind of left over for us when we have done our control mechanisms, when we set in our mitigating measures. So what we want to do is we want to look at the inherent risk, control as much as possible until we are left with a residual risk that we can accept, which is according to our risk tolerance. So for example, to the first example of being run over by a car, well, we tend to look at both sides before we cross a road. And that is a mitigating measures, and we will keep on orienting us around traffic until we accept the risk that we are exposed to in, well, everyday life in traffic. The second example, which we see sadly a lot of cases on in this present time, is the fraud cases. And what you can do as a consumer is to stay resilient towards non-verifiable contacts that try to contact you on email or vice versa. But also educate yourself, because sometimes a mitigating measure might be education, and we see this both within corporations and without corporations, that one of the best ways actually to act upon these risks is to learn more about them so we can identify and protect ourselves against these external risks. So we have the inherent risk that is on the top, that is just plain risk without having any controls. So it's the kind of the purest form of risk. Then we set up control mechanisms, and then what we should experience is kind of this funnel going down, and what we end up with is a residual risk. It is what is the leftovers, and here we need to look at ourselves and talk about acceptance or tolerance. So is the level of residual risk good enough for us? Do we want to take that risk? It can never become zero, but it can become quite low. And we need to find the level where we accept this risk. Otherwise, we need to look back at our controls and the inherent risk to see, can we optimize it? Can we adjust somewhere so we get a lower residual risk until we reach our tolerance level? What we can do is we can do ongoing monitoring or evaluation of this system. So we set up a control parameters to handle the inherent risk. We end up with a residual risk. Then we can analyze this, evaluate, is this good enough for our effort, for our tolerance level? And then we might have to adjust it again because, well, risks are changeable. Risk is an ongoing thing. Nothing really stops being risky. So hence, thereby we go into this iterative circle of monitoring, evaluating our residual risk, going back, looking at the inherent risk, analyzing our controls, see are these the best mitigating measures to secure the residual risk that is equal to our tolerance level. So this was just a short video to introduce you to the concepts of inherent risk and residual risk and going from one to the other. Stay tuned, subscribe to this channel, and let's talk much more and share knowledge.